criminal charges is not just because you may have done something wrong, it's did you behave criminally? And I think what we've seen in this country is an attempt to criminalize politics and to try to criminalize differences. So I don't know what was all about that, but I do know that we look at institutions, unfortunately, like our own FBI and Department of Justice, and we've seen the politicization of those institutions. So I can't speak about that because I haven't seen it, but I can tell you one of my jobs as president will be to end the weaponization of these agencies, and I will get that job done. We will make it happen.
Also weighing in on this is former Arkansas governor and GOP presidential hopeful for 2024, Asa Hutchinson. Here's what he said. I have said from the beginning that Donald Trump's actions on January 6th should disqualify him from ever becoming president again. As a former federal prosecutor, I understand the severity of grand jury investigations and what it means to be targeted by such an investigation.
And joining us right now to discuss is Asa Hutchinson himself. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. You stand by those words?
Well, yes, I do. Of course, I understand that the Justice Department can make errors, but you look at the challenge that someone faces when they're under criminal indictment and now potentially 2 criminal indictments. It is such a distraction for our country, for the campaign. The president, former president, has to be focused on this. And so it's really a matter of putting the office of the presidency above your own interest. And that, to me, is what has to be done. Whenever you look at the challenges with the Justice Department, yesterday I held a news conference announcing my plan to reform the Justice Department and the FBI to correct some of the misdeeds that they've had in the past that looks like politicization. But in this case, I think you ought to put the country above your own self. Even though there is the presumption of innocence, let's put the country first.
And how do you think this, the ongoing indictments of the former president, how do you think this affects the GOP overall as we head into the 2024 presidential election?
Well, that's probably all we're going to be able to talk about, because it's not just here you're going to have another indictment, but it's also every arraignment, every court appearance, every pretrial hearing, every evidentiary filing. All of that is going to be covered by the media. It's going to be disruption in terms of how many times President Trump has to be in the courtroom. And so all of that overshadows the substantive issues of inflation and President Biden's failed policies on border security, on energy policy. And so, you know, as a candidate, obviously it's frustrating, but as a country, this is not a happy day, because not only do you have a former president continue under investigation and under this cloud, but you're not going to be able to talk about really the future of this country and the serious issues that we face. So it's not a good day for America, and that's why we simply need to reform the Justice Department, to reform the FBI, federal law enforcement. It's a broad-ranging challenge that we faced. And we don't need to defund them. We don't need to throw them out. We recognize that we have the best justice system in America. It's human and it makes mistakes, but let's fix it. Let's don't just undermine it.
Let's take a look at some of the fundraising numbers in the race for president 2024. When it comes to total receipts, Florida Governor DeSantis leading the pack, $20 million. Cash on hand, the former president leading $22.5. I don't know how you're doing. Let's see, can we move on? I don't know if we have the numbers from you, Governor, but feel free to tell us what those are. And I know this plays right into what you're describing when it comes to Mr. Trump, the fact that we're talking about him instead of you in this interview. But if this is such a negative preoccupation, why is it that he continues to lead in the polls and continues to bring money in?
Well, because there's a sense, and he has led the effort, that this is the Department of Justice picking on him and having 2 different standards for prosecutions. And I fully expect that if there's an indictment coming down in the next week, that Donald Trump will get another bump out of it. I think over time, people will realize that this is not a winning formulation for the GOP in 2024. This is not going to help us to bring independents and suburban voters into our camp and expand our base. and this is going to overshadow everything. So I think reality will set in over time, but there is a sense that Donald Trump has been targeted. And of course, the Durham report indicates the Justice Department has made a number of errors in their investigations in the past. And that's why I'm calling for reform of the FBI, federal law enforcement. Let's solve these challenges that we face, but it's going to be an overarching challenge for the candidates and certainly for Donald Trump in the next 6 months leading to the Iowa caucuses.
And Mr. Hutchinson, how is your campaign going? How are you feeling? And you mentioned that there were, of course, so many issues facing the American people that might be ignored because of the preoccupation with former President Trump. But what do you think is the most important issue that you want to speak to the American people about and fix?
Well, the number one issue in 2024 in my campaign is getting our economy back on track from the failed policies of President Biden. Whenever you look at the fact that he's restricted our energy growth in this country, trying to do an all-green policy, the fact that he's spent too much federal money, we need to move toward a balanced budget, the fact that he's failed in border security, he showed weakness in foreign policy. All of these things is what I'm leading with, really tied to the economy, because inflation and high interest rates are hurting our families. Control federal spending, that's the heart and root of all of those challenges, all those problems that we see with inflation. And so that's what we've got to do. That's what I'm talking about in the campaign.
All right, Asa Hutchinson, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be with you.